you can unmute yourselves if you want, because I don't want this to be like a one-sided presentation or a one-sided time together. So if you want to unmute yourself and jump into the conversation, please feel free. So my name is Matthew Comer. I'm based in Miami, Florida. I am an executive and life coach, specializing in business development, as well as just a human being. And I think that's the most important thing about this entire day and this festival. And so one of the things that I kind of want to talk about is how it is that we connect and how it is that you find the connection going on in your life these days, given the fact that this is pretty much how, I know in the States anyway, this is how we're pretty much living, is through our virtual realities. And so this is an unprecedented time. It's what one of my favorite speakers, talkers, and stuff like that calls a freaking first time. So this is the first time that we've ever, any of us have had to endure this type of situation and how it affects our connection. So with that said, one of the things I think that's hard about connection is how it is that we all find our own ways to connect. And that's probably the magic mix for all of us, is to figure out how it is that we connect, how it is that we connect with other people. And so how I'm going to connect with you right now is to just talk about the fact that that I'm really kind of nervous about connecting with you, and that this is a constant theme in my life, is the fact that being comfortable with the people that I'm comfortable with, and doing the things that I do. And I public speak all the time because I'm also a Pilates educator. So I spoke into rooms of 60 people and larger. I have, you know, I do one-on-one sessions, I do education sessions, I do everything. So for me, this is all kind of an interesting, kind of always an interesting mix for me. So this is me as part of my connection process. And one of the things that I've always noticed that goes well is me being vulnerable and putting myself kind of out there and just saying, you know, I have an agenda that I can stick to, but, you know, what is the point if we're not connecting? And even just like looking around the screen and seeing all the different boxes and the movement and people's head nodding and everything like that is super reassuring to me, because I can't make eye contact with you. So like one of those things that I would be doing if we were in the same room, or if we were in any gathering where I wasn't even presenting, to where I was just like talking to you, is I would make eye contact with you. And so even looking around the screens right now, this is like an interesting thing to have to like bounce off of all of the different screens and to see all of that. Hi there. So like waves are awesome. I love them. It makes me feel like, you know, like you're engaged and you're paying attention. I like your smiles. I see your eye contact, how you're kind of shifting around. People are nodding heads, that kind of stuff. So the non-verbality of our conversation is really important to us. Hearing when I was in grad school, like 80% of our communication is that we understand intuitively. 80% of it is through body language. And really only 20% of what we understand and comprehend is through words. So if you think about that concept, like that's how emotions are given off, that's how, you know, relationships are made and connections are made. So that's kind of me throwing out vulnerability. If I can, like I said, unmute yourselves if you want to, and you want to jump in the conversation. One of the other questions that that I would throw out is, when you're in conversation with people, are you asking creative questions? So what would a creative question look like? You can unmute yourself and ask one if you want.
Hi, Matthew.
Hi.
Matthew's my best friend, you guys. So this is a fun topic because these are things we normally talk about like on almost a daily basis. But I think asking creative questioning is going a little deeper in a question, like not just, how are you? Something a little more leading in questions that leads us to more vulnerable conversations.
Yeah. So other than how's the weather, or, how are you, or those types of questions, because most of us are going to respond to the how are you questions. It's like, oh, I'm fine. So in coaching, that's what we would call a closed question, meaning that it leads nowhere. It's a 1 or 2, word response, and that's kind of it. And so to get out of that place where you're going to ask another question and you're like, well, that was a bomb. And that's what you think in your head, like when I think of those types of questions, creative questions. So a creative question would be like, what was the one thing that you did today that felt really awesome to you? And then this is the silent pause that you would have. So ask one question in my book. My kind of book is that I ask one question and I take a pause. So if my water bottle was close to me, if I was at a social gathering where I could actually talk in person with people, I would probably grab my drink and take a sip. And that would lead you to have something, which is probably like that kind of pause. So that type of taking a pause and asking one question allows the person that you're conversing with to actually maybe even figure out how they feel, or the experience of how they feel. Because in reality, and like coaching, we don't really talk about feelings. We actually talk about experiences. So what is that experience like for you? So even having this experience, what is this like for you? Sitting on the other side of the screen, figuring out what the heck is he talking about? Anybody want to jump in other than Kristen? I see Vanessa on the other side of the screen, who I haven't seen in a million years.
I'll talk all day.
Yeah, I will too. I mean, you should see my computer screen. My computer screen has those like, yeah. I'm American, so I'm going to say, 1.5 inch by 1 inch Post-its, and I have my talking points. So, those are the things that I have on my side. So go, Kristen.
I think it's just, even this whole day, I bounced around after my talk this morning and bounced around from channel to channel. And it's amazing how, because this time is so disconnecting, that this was so connecting, this whole experience today. Like, amazing. Like, I wish I could have been more present during the past week, and because this day has been magical almost, to be able to take part in so many different things all day and connect with people around the world. I mean, what a wonderful thing right
now. Yeah.
Anybody else? Well, I've got to jump in there and say thank you for such beautiful words. I actually heard someone the other day saying it's like the pause afterwards is when everything gets said, or something along those lines. It's like when you allow time for someone to comprehend what you've said, and don't like try and fill the silences, because actually it's the silences where everything happens. And I find that I thought that was a really nice thing, which I remembered. And just to do a little plug here, obviously the vulnerable and the shirts and stuff, that's the purpose of the Polite Club badge, in a way, is like when you're wearing the badge, and I have quite a lot of experience in wearing it, because I just basically wear it all the time now, that it starts a conversation before you need to start a conversation. And then the conversation, because you're wearing obviously vulnerability, or talking about your feelings or whatever it might be, you don't often then talk about the weather afterwards. It's like saying, yeah, I'm here, I'm vulnerable, you are vulnerable too, great. how are you? How actually are you? How, you know, what's the deeper thing? What's this experience like for you? And I found that it's opened loads of doors into really, really beautiful mini connections, whether it's like just passing by on the street or actually deeper than that in a social situation. It's really great. So yeah, I can I urge everyone from the festival is going to receive a discount via email to get a shirt as well. So there you go, another little plug. But yeah, wonderful guys. So thank you very much for those comments. Yeah, definitely. Has anyone else got anything to bring in?
All silence. Okay. What are the other ways that you can make connections? What? Jump.
That's something I just wanted to add on, because I thought it was, when you mentioned, Matthew, sorry to interrupt you, but when you mentioned how you take a sip of water, because I know Matthew and Kristen, I introduced them. And so one of the things that I've noticed, and especially when you start to draw connections and more, and you start to open up during conversations, is just those points where somebody's digesting what they're saying. And so noticing if yours is maybe swallowing a sip of water, or sometimes I notice quite often people will do a little bit of a hum as they're digesting something. So after you say something, then somebody takes it in, they're like, that's their moment. And if you don't let them do that, or you don't do that yourself, then generally the real stuff doesn't have a chance to come out. So it's just kind of interesting if you start to observe those sort of things.
Yeah. Kind of the silence is golden kind of moment with your conversations.
Yeah.
I see you over there on the screen getting closer. But yeah, it's, go ahead.
Sorry, she wants to talk to you guys, I guess.
Oh, good. But one of the other ways to kind of make connections too is you know, kind of like the badge that you wear, Adam, is to also give some type of praise to people, and to actually see them. So one of the things that I remember being with, it was a boyfriend at the time, and I was like in the elevator, and like just somebody walked in, and I was like struck by something, whether it was their shoes, their haircut, or their appearance, and I was like, oh my God, I love whatever. And it was like, literally, I couldn't hold myself from saying what I was saying. It was honest and genuine, kind of like, I see you. I noticed this thing about you, whatever that thing is. And so giving somebody some honest praise is also a really nice way to connect with them, because you're actually like seeing them. You know, like even something that you think is silly, like the way that they did the bun on their hair or their head, or the way something's draping off their shoulders, or you just notice their shoulders, or something like that. Not that appearance is everything, but like the fact that you actually see them, that you actually feel them, whatever that feeling is. Because that person probably did go into, or they may not have gone into their closet and put on anything that they thought was too spectacular that day. Like I always think about that when I like, somebody's like, oh my God, I really like this. Okay. And then I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, I just walked into my closet and I was hurrying around at 7 o'clock in the morning trying to put something on, and here I am, you know, and that was it. And that kind of stuff is just, is interesting. So praise is one of those things. One of the things that I'm like dying from, and thankfully I live with my boyfriend, so touch is like one of those things too. But certainly other people is at this point a touch from other people. So like I'm you know, getting ready to go back to live in-person work here shortly, teaching Pilates and movement. And so like I can't touch people the way that I was touching them before. So to embrace them or to get anywhere close to them is one of those things that, you know, I am still mourning, because that's one of the ways that I connect. It's one of the ways that I was taught to connect with my parents. My parents are very touchy-feely, especially coming from the background that they come from. Like just, you know, a slight touch on the back, or relative proximity to each other to where you could reach out and touch somebody. So touching is one of those ways that we connect. And so for me, it's one of those things that I miss tremendously. And I'm going to learn when I go back to even, and having to like pay attention to my visceral reactions to that, and missing it and not being able to do it because it's not taking care of the other person and not taking care of myself at the same time. So touch is like one of those ways that we connect. So if there's somebody that you feel safe touching, and that like touch them, connect with them, look in their eyes, you know, hold their hand, give yourself a good embrace. Like one of my whole things right now is about patting myself on the back, and like literally I reach around and pat myself on the back, because some of the stuff that I'm doing right now are like major steps for myself.
Matthew, can I add something?
Yeah.
Like, so as I was mentioned about the vulnerable and rebellious, when there's an opportunity, and this is part of how I manage my anxiety, or one of the things I did to manage the micro anxieties. So the micro anxieties being at the situation where you have an opportunity to pay someone a compliment, or you have an opportunity to do whatever, you feel in an energetic movement in your body, and that's always going to happen. That's not going to go anywhere. But what I found, like the vulnerability being a muscle, is that if you, in your day-to-day practice, feel that vulnerability and do it anyway, like the power of vulnerability, feel the fear and do it anyway. Those tiny little things, when you have a situation that is, because you've been practicing and stretching that muscle, when you have a situation that is incredibly anxiety inducing, then you're better prepared, you're more flexible, arguably, to handle it. So to take an example today, like if I went back 6 months to a year, I would have been like, before this whole thing, I would have been very, very anxious and I was nervous to do this, of course, but it wasn't to the level of previous self. So, but that comes through doing little things, little gestures, and connection starts from within, doesn't it, essentially? And it's like, when you feel that vulnerability, act on it and do something, because before you know it, you'll be like, oh, okay, that's what it's about. And it's a really, like, it's kind of addictive, actually.
We're losing, you broke up a lot.
Oh, did I? Sorry, I don't know if everyone else can hear me.
Yeah.
But everyone else. Sorry, it might be your end, mate. So sorry to say it, but people. Well, but yeah, just it's just in. I thought I'd add there. But if you got anything, just in closing to wrap up your. I realised I'd just take a minute of your closing thing. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no. One of the last things I kind of want to talk about is being present. So when you're in conversation, you're connecting with people, like your cell phones and your other things that are in your pockets. Like, again, if I'm in an in-person type gig, I like turn my phone to airplane, because I don't want to be bothered by phone calls or text messages or anything. So if I'm with you, I'm with you. And this is something that I'm really trying to practice a lot of, more and more. So those are kind of like the things that I would, just ask yourself to get curious about how it is that you connect, when you connect, and those types of things.
Round of applause to everybody.
Vulnerability is a muscle. The more you use it, the more you practice it, the easier it becomes.